Hello, everyone. Ron here from L.T.L Tutoring Central, and I am here with another reading comprehension and discussion video. This one's all about emotions and anxiety. I think we all have a certain amount of anxiety these days. But before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much to everyone who has subscribed and liked videos and commented. I appreciate it. It really does help the channel and keeps it going. So you do want to do that. Also, check in the description for other links. If you're planning on taking one of my Udemy courses, be sure to send me an email so I can send you a coupon for huge savings. The coupons that they allow me to create only last 5 days at the lowest price. So I can't really post them here. They won't last long enough. So just shoot me an email. Tell me which course you'd like to take, and I will send that coupon along. Of course, if you're interested in finding out more about my private tutoring service that I do in person if you're local, back here at the big table. See all my papers back here getting ready for today, or online. So it doesn't matter where you live in the world, as long as you have an internet connection, we can do some lessons. So you can just email me and ask me for more information, or we can have a free information meeting. Now I'm just looking down here to find my share button so that I can share this text that we're going to read today. And I will put a link below to this text so you can go and check it out for yourself as well. Understanding your emotions can help you manage your anxiety. Can all use that. The book Good Anxiety uses new and established neuroscience to help readers harness their fears in order to feel better. Now, before I get into this, I haven't read this article. This will be my first time reading, so if I stumble or make mistakes, it's going to be in the video because I don't usually edit these videos. I just do them, and the flaws, unless it's really extraordinary, I don't do it again. So I'll apologize for that in advance. But yes, I've heard this lots of times. There's a sort of good stress or good anxiety and bad stress and bad anxiety. I'm not sure if they're going to go into that here, but it sounds like they might. And the idea is, learning how to cope, learning how to deal with that anxiety is more important than whether or not you have that anxiety. Let's see. Popular Science, Wendy Suzuki. This is from Pocket. Take some deep breaths. That will help. Kelvin Valerio. Yes, deep breathing. I do teach that in my with some of my students about breathing from the abdomen instead of shallow breathing, just sort of calm things down. Excerpted from Good Anxiety, Harnessing the Power of the Most Misunderstood Emotion by Dr. Wendy Suzuki with permission from Atria, copyright 2022 by Wendy Suzuki, PhD. The stress that causes anxiety is not going away, but we do have the capacity to optimize our response to it. Researchers, including Alia Crum, a Stanford psychology professor, have shown it's possible to approach stress as a challenge and an opportunity for performance and growth. At the neurobiological level, what Crum and others are suggesting is part of a wider area of research and framing of the brain known as emotion regulation, the processes that help us manage all emotional responses, especially anxiety. What does emotion regulation mean? One expert on emotion regulation, James J. Gross, another psychology professor at Stanford University, defines emotion regulation as the processes by which individuals influence which emotions they have, when they have them, and how they experience and express them. He also points out that regulation is a set of processes that exist on a continuum from conscious, effortful, and controlled regulation to unconscious, effortless, and automatic regulation. What does this mean in practice? The bottom line is this. Though anxiety might originate as some form of attention-getting signal to avoid danger, it doesn't necessarily have to cause discomfort, distraction, or otherwise interfere with our natural drive toward well-being and balance. We can learn to use awareness to reframe a situation, remove the perception of danger, and reappraise it as an opportunity to overcome a challenge and create new responses. We have multiple options for managing both the attention to the signal and the anxiety, the feelings. And if it gets to that point, the response itself. Our brain is a wondrous thing. Our brain-body systems are in a constant drive toward homeostasis, that state of equilibrium between arousal and relaxation. Every system, from the nervous system to the digestive, is interacting and exchanging signals in order to respond to a stressor and then regain homeostasis. This is true of our emotional system as well. Our negative emotions arise to draw our attention to something that may be dangerous and then make some sort of change or adaptation to feel better. In other words, they have a positive purpose. It is the same with anxiety. It's the brain body's way of telling us to pay attention. Our built-in system for managing our negative emotions, of processing, responding to, and coping with negative emotions in particular, so we can maintain or return to homeostasis, is called emotion regulation. How to regulate emotions. Anxiety is a bundle of emotions that upset our ability to emotionally regulate, and they are meant to, because they are meant to draw our attention to an area where all is not as it should be. However, our ability to regulate our emotions is not always predictable. Indeed, the degree of one's capacity for emotion regulation varies depending on a number of factors. How we were raised, our lifestyle, and even our genetic profile. I'm just going to stop for a second in the reading part and say a couple of things, although they may be clarified as we go on. But yes, I often think of emotions as something that initially, at least, you don't have a lot of control over. That's why they're called emotions, just feelings, right? And sometimes I have stress all the time. I'm one of those people. I'm a very high stress guy, but I don't always feel I have the total control of it initially. Now, I think that there's things you can do afterwards. I think there's coping mechanisms and maybe you can change over time, but I'm not sure that you're always going to have control over those emotions. And yes, our lifestyle and even our genetic profile. That's why I stopped there when I read genetic profile, because I think it's sort of in your genes. So some people who are just sort of Zen by nature, and sometimes people say, oh, they've done all this work, and maybe they haven't. Maybe they're just naturally calm. Some people aren't faced with the same stressors, but don't give up. I think there are ways of uh, learning and coping. Let's see if there's some good tips here. The good news is that we can learn to regulate our emotions more effectively. According to Gross's model of emotion regulation, we have 5 types of anxiety management strategies that can help manage anxiety and other negative emotions. These are situation selection, situation modification, attention deployment, cognitive change, and response modulation. If I were teaching this as an academic setting, I would say, here's a good time to take a note of these headings and ask the questions using the SQ3R method. You might want to check that video out for SQ3R, or take one of my Udemy courses where I teach that. The first 4 can interrupt anxiety before it develops into an extreme state or a chronic one. The 5th is a regulatory technique after the anxiety or other negative emotion has occurred. The wording here, I don't know. The first 4 can interrupt anxiety before it develops into an extreme state. The 5th is a regulatory technique after the anxiety. Well, they're all after the anxiety. It's like I was saying before, a feeling or emotion or anxiety. So interrupting anxiety, that means it's already started. So it's not before. Let's look at how emotion regulation plays out in real life. Say you are anticipating an important job interview after being let go from your former position 6 months prior. You are feeling pressure, self-doubt, and fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not measuring up. I think we've all been there. The interview is 4 days away, but you're already feeling nervous. When you imagine walking through the door of the building, your hands start to sweat, Your heart ticks up and your breath becomes a tiny bit shallow. Next, you begin to imagine every possible thing that could go wrong. You might forget to bring your resume. You might wear mismatching socks, or you might forget everything you know about why you're applying for the job in the first place. Yes, I think your breathing can become a lot more than a tiny bit shallow. It can become very shallow. Some people even pass out. So, um, yes, and imagining every possible thing that could go wrong. I'm going to see what they say as we read through, but I want to comment. I'm reacting to this. Um, I actually use that as a coping mechanism to some extent because if I can imagine everything that maybe not everything, but a lot of things that could go wrong, and then find a counter argument to that, that actually helps calm me down. And usually you do better than the worst case scenario, so that makes you feel better. Situation selection. One option is to avoid a situation that you expect will bother you or exacerbate your anxiety. Avoiding the situation, skipping the job interview, may alleviate the fear and stress in the near term. However, it clearly will not help you if in the long run you want or need the job in question. Gross calls this strategy situation selection. So yes, in a job, that's probably not very possible. But for other things, you can sometimes just avoid. You just don't want to avoid everything, or else you take all the joy and excitement and learning out of your life. So you don't want to avoid all situations, but some of them you don't need anyway. So that's one way. Situation modification. Another option is to modify the current situation so that the anticipation or anxiety is made more tolerable or bearable. For instance, if you're experiencing anxiety about the pending interview, you could modify the situation by asking to do the interview over the phone or video conference. This enables you to exert some control over your anxiety and puts you more in charge of the feeling that it's bigger than you. Gross calls this situation modification. I call it a shift from bad to good anxiety. Hmm. Your nervousness has not disappeared. It's simply under your control and being channeled. Attention deployment. A third option is referred to as attention deployment, which includes several ways you can avert your attention from the anxiety-provoking situation to something else that absorbs your attention. Parents use this technique frequently with their infants and toddlers. If the young child is afraid of dogs, for example, a parent could direct the child's focus to a funny face while the scary dog walks away. This is a kind of intentional distraction. Okay, I suppose they didn't really give a good example here, unless you happen to be a tiny child. Uh, but I think maybe just sort of psychologically thinking of other things instead of just drilling down and dwelling on the interview, the job interview, to use their other example. Um, do other things or think of other things, happier, less anxiety producing things until you get closer to the point where you actually have to do. As long as you're already prepared, you don't have to keep going over and over and over. So you can use attention deployment. Cognitive change. The fourth and probably most sophisticated of the strategies for emotion regulation is referred to as cognitive change. In this case, you actively and consciously reappraise or reframe your mindset or attitude. Instead of thinking about the job interview as a horrible way to spend your Friday morning, you reframe it as an opportunity to show yourself and your potential employer how much you know about the role and the company or organization. It also builds your confidence. The reframe acts as a mental suggestion that reshapes the feeling of anxiety from one of dread and feeling overwhelmed to one of excitement and challenge. Okay, so reframing the way you think about it, cognitive change is reframing. And you might have to you have to consciously think of it, but it might also be good to write it down, or write it out, or make a list or a bullet points or something to sort of help you to reframe those cognitive thoughts that you're having. Response modulation. Once you have managed to get yourself through the front door and seated in the interview, it's possible that the anxiety will rear its head despite the strategies you used to mitigate it thus far. In this case, you are actively trying to suppress or mitigate the anxious feelings. Perhaps you do some breath work. In other words, deep breathing, which is one of the fastest and most effective ways to calm the entire nervous system, or drink some water. If it were not a job interview that got you all keyed up, but a date, you might have a beer or glass of wine to take the edge off. These are a few of the many coping strategies you can use after the anxiety is experienced. Well, deep breathing, I mentioned before, as they did, I think is excellent. I teach it. I use it myself when I feel too anxious. It really does help calm everything down. There are other things you can do while you're deep breathing, paying attention to all of the good things around you, all of the free things in life. I know it's very expensive, this life, but lots of free, beautiful things to enjoy. And you can think about that as you're deep breathing. It just sort of brings you down to earth a little bit, so to speak. Drinking some water, I guess that can be very helpful, particularly if you're dehydrated, although nowadays everybody seems to be drinking water every 5 minutes, which I don't know, but I don't understand that. But a beer or a glass of wine, if you're going on a date or something, I guess. But again, be careful because they are depressants. They can actually, but it can, at least if you have one of them, it can calm you down a little bit sometimes. You just have to be careful with that. You can learn to manage your anxiety. Current research into the interplay between anxiety and emotion regulation points to strong evidence that interventional strategies such as reappraisal can build one's capacity for emotion regulation and positively affect anxiety. These studies have been done in the context of anxiety disorders. Specifically, neuroimaging studies have shown that negative emotions of anxiety or fear lessen in response to emotion regulation strategies. Further, neuroimaging studies have also shown that the negative emotions of anxiety or fear occur in different neural regions of the brain from where emotion regulation occurs. This area of research is in its infancy, but this is good news. We can update our emotional responses. We can learn to emotionally regulate. We can be we can become better at managing and then channeling our anxiety. That is good news. I like to think of this approach to anxiety as a way of building our resilience to stress. Consider this. We need to both feel the feelings and update our responses to those feelings. This begins with awareness. Once you realize you get uncomfortable at any sign of anxiety, you need to stop and think about what you do with the feelings. We all need constant practice simply sitting with our feelings and not trying to immediately mask, deny, escape, or distract ourselves. By sitting with the discomfort, you do two things. You get accustomed to the feeling and realize that you can indeed survive it, and you give yourself time and space in your brain to make a more conscious decision about how to act or respond. This is exactly how a new, more positive neural pathway is established. I'm just not sure if I'm going to cough, so I'm getting ready in case I have to mute myself. I'm going to read about Dr. Wendy in a minute. Yes, these are great ideas, great strategies and tips to help with anxiety. Because I have dealt with it myself since I was very young, a child basically. I've done a lot of research and a lot of studying, and of course I studied psychology at the university as well. And so I don't think there's anything brand new here for me, but maybe there is for you. And it's great to be reminded of some of these ideas or techniques or tips, whatever you want to call them. And I think yes, it's good to acknowledge what's creating the anxiety or the fear, if you can find it. That's the problem sometimes. Sometimes I think it's also physical things. I didn't mention it here, but there can be certain diseases or certain deficiencies or whatnot that you don't know about that can just automatically cause it, and so you might want to check with your doctor on those ones. But otherwise, you can think about it, acknowledge it, and then do something with it. Once you start to do something with whatever's causing the fear or anxiety or stress, whatever, uh, it automatically starts to make you feel better. Even if you don't have an immediate solution, it's not all going to just disappear and go away, but it feels somewhat better because you have control. You're taking control. They mentioned that in the article. Having a little bit of control over the interview or a little bit of control over whatever it is that's causing you the anxiety can really make you feel better, even if it doesn't completely solve it. And I think having some stress and anxiety is a good thing. It motivates us, makes us do what we need to do in terms of maybe our jobs, but even in our personal lives, there are things we need to get done. And having a little bit of that doesn't hurt to motivate us and push us to move forward. So yes, okay. So here, Dr. Wendy Suzuki is an award-winning professor of neuroscience and psychology in the Center for Neuroscience at New York University and is the Cyril Kushner Dean of NYU's College of Arts and Science. She is a celebrated international authority on neuroplasticity, was recently named one of the top 10 women changing the way we see the world by Good Housekeeping, and regularly serves as a sought-after expert for publications including the Wall Street Journal, Shape, and Health. Her TED Talk has more than 55 million views. She is the author of Good Anxiety and Healthy Brain, Happy Life. Well, interesting to know she has a TED Talk. Maybe I can do a reaction to that at some point if I can find it. It doesn't say what it's specifically about, but she says she has one. So that might be good. I've done reactions to TED Talks before. Just started doing that on this particular channel. This isn't normally a reaction channel, but I am including some reactions onto this channel as well. Excellent. Psychology is such an interesting area to study. I really enjoyed my psychology courses, well, most of them. There were some that were a little more, statistics wasn't my favorite one, but a lot of them were very, very interesting indeed. Always interested in how this thing works, since that's really what if there's anything that is an I or a me, it's in here somewhere. It's in the brain. It's in the mind. So it's very interesting to try to understand it the best we can. And in terms of anxiety and stress, it's good to learn how to control that. I'm just going to slide up to the top again. Understanding your emotions can help you manage your anxiety. All right, I'm going to stop the share for a second. Back to the big screen. Excellent. I thought that was a very, very good article. I think it'd be very helpful to a lot of people. It's even helpful to me. As I say, I don't think there's anything brand new there for me, but it's good to be reminded of it, of the different tips and strategies. Sometimes you kind of let them slide and forget about them and are not using all of the tools in your toolbox. So it's always good to review and remind oneself that they're there and that you can use them. So I'll probably be using some of those today. All right. I always get a little stressed even just when I'm making videos. And I don't know why, because I enjoy doing it. That's what I mean. There can be what they call good stress and bad stress, but it can all affect you in a negative way. Even the good stress, you're having a birthday party or you're going to a celebration of some kind. You want to do it. You know it's going to be fun, or at least you think it is, and yet you can get stressed out to the point of making yourself ill or very, very uncomfortable, at least. I don't know. It's the nature of human beings, but not all human beings. Some people are much more, as I say, zen, relaxed. I think it's genetic. And some of us are a little more high strung, a little bit more stressed. Nothing wrong with that. You just learn to deal and cope with it. And you know what? Sometimes the high stress people are the ones that come up with the solutions because they're motivated, they're pushed to do so. Or they can be more empathetic as well. Sometimes. I'm not saying everybody, but sometimes because you know what it's like. You've been there. You can feel it. When I work with my younger students, I have students of all ages, but when I work with my younger students who are struggling with anxiety at school or stress or bullies, things that aren't even academic sometimes are kind of messing them up. I get it. I understand it. I have been there. I know what they're feeling to some extent. You can't know another person 100%, but you get the idea. And because of that, you can be more empathetic and I think more helpful. So if you're one of those people that has a little too much stress or you think you're anxious too often, turn it into a good thing. That's the cognitive change that we need. All right. It is Ron from L.T.L Tutoring Central. Don't forget to check below for information, links to my website, of course, and the blog there. And also, if you want to take one of my Udemy courses, don't forget to send me a message so I can send you a coupon and save you lots of money. And if you're interested in my private tutoring service, I offer a free information meeting. It can be done online from anywhere, locally or otherwise, and it can be done locally if you're a local person. Just let me know, and I can send you days and times that we might be able to meet. Otherwise, just keep learning, keep having fun. I'm just looking for my end meeting so that I can stop recording. Bye bye for now.